Welcome to another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, where I, Megan, sit down with a couple of other amazing ladies to dig up the dirt on the undead in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. For this episode, I've resurrected Pepperina and Casey, so we can sink our teeth into this episode called Eternal Servitude, Embracing the Giving Spirit.
This episode on the It's a Mimic channel is going to commit completely to an infinite task that awaits those who got more than they bargained for. The ever-present, never-changing, always serving, and destined to hit repeat 1 on their playlists of doom. These devoted undead don't believe in the till death do us part portion of their vows and are sticking around long past their expiration date to keep on keeping on.
But before we dive into these poor, unfortunate souls, I want to ask, what do you think would be the worst task to have to do over and over and over again for the rest of eternity? Do we want to roll for it, or do we want to just...
Yeah, roll for it.
I gotta get my dice out.
I have to get my thinking cap on here. Hold on.
Thinking cap. Dice. I have my whole fucking dice.
I'm trying to think of like the most monotonous thing that I do in life.
I got a 1.
I got a 10.
Good start.
Different dice. We're going with a different dice already.
Switching it up.
Switching it out.
Well, Casey, you're first. What task?
Well, I went to just what is the most unpleasant job. So I would say being a servant that has to if we're sticking with the times of D&D, usually cleaning bedpans or cleaning up after humans or humanoids.
Yeah, I was going on a similar vein where the one that I would really, really, really not want to do is pull hair out of someone's drain. You know what I mean? Be my job for the rest of my life, is to pull their long, thick ass hair out of someone's drain.
Oh God.
For the rest of my fucking life. Makes me want to vomit just thinking about it.
There's 3 girls with very long hair in my house, so I get that.
Yeah.
And it's all very colorful, so
you know whose hair is whose.
It's pink and blue and orange hair coming out of the drain. Yeah. All right, mine I think would just be dishes and laundry. I fucking hate folding laundry. Just the putting away of the laundry, I think, would be the...
Oh man, I could zenly fold socks for the rest of my life. I feel like that would be my monk zen thing, would be I just fold socks for my
I don't even attempt to fold socks. I just throw them all loose in a drawer.
You know what?
And then deal with it later.
Oh,
that's a lot of chaos I can't handle.
Who's surprised about my chaos? Nobody.
I'm not surprised by your chaos, but I don't accept your chaos.
That was me until Marie Kondo came into my life 5 years ago or 6 years ago. Now it's the perfect fold and stack.
I can't. I just don't have the time. Or the motivation, really. My laundry lives in baskets for a week or 2 before it finally gets folded and put away.
Oh man.
Just because I can't.
I happened to be helping my partners fold their clothes the other day. Mm-hmm. And we're just gonna jam all of these socks into this one drawer without pairing them. And it just hurts my soul. Just let me clean out that sock drawer for you. Just let me just once. Anyways, let's dig into it. So we're going to talk about a couple of some baddies in the D&D world that have little creatures that probably follow them around, or just creatures that follow around others for other such reasons. So the first one I actually wanted to talk about is the Indentured spirits. But in order to do so, we kind of have to understand a little bit more about what's called the Deathpact angel. So I won't go too far into detail, as we will, of course, kind of cover the actual Deathpact angel, in greater detail in a couple of future episodes, just because there's a lot to them. So I feel like we're going to give a full episode to them. Not us, maybe the regular podcast, but we'll see.
Somebody will talk about them.
It'll come up, But if you do want to learn more after this episode, before we talk about it again, Death Angels can be found within the Guildmaster's Guide to the Ravnica book. But a simple breakdown is that they are angels that can be found in the cathedrals of Orzhov, where they basically sit and are recognized as a beneficent god, where they grant wishes from people, for people that are searching for things like wealth, power, health, the basics of, existence in life. And these wishes will usually be granted, but only because the Deathpact Angel expects a lot in return, such as basically a life debt. So once you have been blessed by the Death Angel, you are now indebted to them to the point of bringing in riches and gold and offerings without expecting anything in return anymore. You're now doing it as like you are just in servitude to this god. And I say god loosely, it's like a quote unquote god. Basically so it can continue to grow its hoard, but also if you die as one, you become what's called these indentured spirits, which is now indebted to the said Deathpact Angel. But we'll get more to that in a second when I actually get into the indentured spirits. But a quick rundown, if you want to fight a Deathpact Angel, don't. They are CR 14, which comes from an AC of 18, a regular speed, but also a fly speed of 90. And they are spellcasters that can charm you, paralyze you, and raise the dead. Plus, they have all kinds of magical resistances, so just don't.
Just don't. I feel like that's our advice on a lot of things. It's just don't fight it. Just walk away.
100%. But the other thing is, like, if you're coming across a Deathpact Angel, you are probably going to come across its servants, which, as I mentioned, is the indentured spirits. So of course these are found in the Book of Ravnica as well, but if you look at the art, they appear like very Death Reaper-y. Like they're like fully like robed and clothed, but they also have like large chains that they wear around their necks and their arms to represent their servitude to the angel in Orzhov. And as mentioned previously, they are basically the spirits of the dead that have now owed a life debt to the Deathpact Angel, and now live only to basically die for the Deathpact Angel. So what that means is if an indentured spirit sees the Death Angel fall to 0 hit points, they will sacrifice themselves to bring her back to life, or them back to life. So basically, in my mind, if you're a Deathpact Angel, you're going to have a bunch of these around just in case something pops off, right?
Yeah.
Sacrifice.
Yeah.
But if you fight one, here are some stats. So they are a CR of 1 with an AC of 11 with only 13 hit points and a fly speed of 40. They're average in all stats except for wisdom, which is basically only a +1. So at first bluff, they don't look very frightening. They're just like these weird ghost things with chains that float around. You know what I mean? It's like, if you hit it, it might die. However, they are immune to being charmed, exhausted, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, and restrained.
Wow.
Also,
for a CR1?
Also immune to cold and necrotic damage. They're also resistant to acid, fire, lightning, thunder, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical items.
Yeah.
So they're hard to hit.
They're hard to, like, it's one of those things that when you hit it, but like, but I mean, at the end of the day, these are basically ghosts floating around. So it kind of makes sense that you can't really just poke it with the pointy end. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be harder to hit it. And when it comes to its abilities, all they really have is what's called incorporeal movement, which means they can float through objects. They just treat it as difficult terrain. But if they end their turn inside something, they take 1d10 force damage. Other than that, they have one attack called the Withering Touch, which is a +3 to hit melee attack with a 3d6 necrotic damage. That is it. Because like their main thing is to be servants of this Deathpact Angel and then just be around to bring her back to life.
Yeah.
Right.
So
they're just hanging out.
Right. All right. So that's pretty much it for the Deathpact Angel and its indentured spirits. So let's raise some dice and chat some shit.
17.
14.
10.
Amazing, Casey. All right. As always, interesting quest options for these folks.
I would like the quest to be before they actually become the indentured spirit. Like, I would want to know how they got to be that way.
Yeah.
Whether that's them as they're living and they have had this pact done and then they realize like, oh shit, I am going to be serving this thing forever. Like they didn't read the fine print until after it was done and are asking you for help. I think that would be a fun quest idea. Take it back before it actually happens and maybe see how it happens. And they die like in the fight or something and then get raised as one of these. Yeah. I was thinking something along the lines. It was kind of similar along those lines, but it would be like the family of someone who has been missing and like
went missing or whatever, and you're going to go and try and find them. And then you find out that they have long since passed and are now operating in servitude to this one thing. And like the quest is to try and find a way to free them or release them or kill them, and then have that hard conversation with the family at the end.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think that would be a really, really fun, emotional roller coaster horror story kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, well, at least they're at peace now.
At least
I killed them, so now they can rest. There you go. Where's my reward?
they left because you guys were starving, so they went and traded their life for a lifetime of food for you. Like, can you imagine, like, their life just got infinitely better, but they were missing this one person, and they're like, this doesn't matter to us because, like, dad's missing. And it's like, you know what I mean? I love all these riches, and we're like, we have sheep coming out the wazoo, but you know, dad didn't come home, so like, what's up with that? You know,
I should maybe look into that. I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, that could also be like a quest thing too, is that people come from all over to visit this one Deathpact angel because they are constantly building up their army of these things, so that people will come from all over the world just to like get their wishes in kind of thing. And then this whole area becomes like all servitudes of this thing, and it's like desecrated ground in the whole 9 yards, right? You now just have like a haunted town.
Yeah.
What about you, Casey?
Well, I got some inspiration from Adam and some like trauma from our previous campaign.
That tracks.
Yeah. So I was thinking, if you had your party encounter a Deathpact angel like far before they are supposed to, and maybe they're a bit bold, and maybe they don't understand that they should not fight this thing, and so they do, and the Deathpact angel entertains it for a while. But before actually killing anyone or causing a TPK, it kind of pauses. I assume it can interact quite well. Like it has languages, and it offers the party a deal. And we'll assume the party also has some NPCs around, but offers them a deal to take one of their group as a like indentured servant, and they must decide now. And so the party has to decide to give up someone to go with the Deathpact angel. And this could be earlier in the campaign. It more than likely will be an NPC.
No, it'll be Dan's character 100%. Yeah, I'll go with you.
Yeah, it could be. And then that would just add a whole lot of midweek content for the DM and that player character.
It would be really cool though to like, because I think we did this once. And Dan's character actually did this with the hags, and then he ended up getting a point in Warlock, I think. Because he made a pact with them. So I feel like that would be a similar vibe to what you're saying. Is like, if you make a pact with it, the character doesn't necessarily have to go anywhere right now, but you now have a level of Warlock, and you are a servant to this thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Good. Very good point. Because that was another point of trauma. That campaign.
So many points of trauma.
Just all trauma.
You could just like really make the players hone in on their alignment and like where they stand and whether they're going to do this. Or you could also serve up an NPC that actually then like at the DM's discretion could have to go with the Deathpact angel. And then, you know, many months potentially later, you re-encounter this Deathpact angel and you see your friend, and they might still be a servant, but they may have ended up being one of these spirits as well. And so you may encounter them once as a servant, and then you may encounter them even a third time, and then they're finally a spirit, and you're just like, or you sacrifice and you kill them off just to save them from this like endless like bout of servitude to this creature, but then it just bounces back as an indentured spirit, and it's like, well, shit.
Fuck.
So I feel like, there's just so much you could throw at a party to do, like questioning, making a decision in that moment that would be a drastic like impact on the group with this.
Yeah.
That's where I went.
Hey man, we always like to talk about our traumas here. It's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Safe space, safe space. The internet is a safe place to do that, you know.
Basically our therapy.
Speaking of which, the next topic is existential horror and or body horror, shall we say?
I think I would just go with like a hollowness. Like they would just feel empty.
Mhm.
Their life purpose is gone. Their only purpose at this point is to serve. And so there would be just an emptiness in their eyes. Do they have eyes?
They're hooded like ghost creatures.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I feel like you could give them like weird little ethereal eye sockets, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they would definitely be like airy and ethereal and non-existent, almost like, to your point, dead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you could look at their face to see if they were that person you were looking for, but you could clearly tell that person is not there anymore.
Yeah.
Just looking at like just their expression is gone. Their eyes are empty. Just like a hollow moaning or whining. That's how I would go. Just empty.
Yeah.
A shell of what they used to be.
100%. Like I would lean into almost like the exploration piece as to wondering if one of these is around. I get like, what are those things called? Dementors in fucking Harry Potter. This is the vibe I get from them. So like the area is going to be cold because like one of the resistances they have is to cold damage. I'm assuming that is because they are cold and undead, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like if these are around, like the temperature is going to drop. So your rogue wearing nothing but a thin tunic, it would probably like be super chilly and super cold. You know what I mean? So you can kind of like lean into that from the environment standpoint.
Yeah, and
But-
like a sense of dread just in the air.
Yeah. Like the life is like almost like the air, like the life has been sucked out of the room, right?
Mhm.
Like that kind of feeling. But like also like the chains are a big thing. Because I imagine, what is that fucking Christmas Story one with like the
Yeah.
that's all I can think of. And like I think that's part of my childhood trauma. Even the Muppets version of the Christmas like tale with like the ghost with the chains on him and shit like that. Like
Yeah.
rent free in my head from a horror standpoint, like that visual and like that sound.
I always think of the Scrooge McDuck version of that.
Yeah, but it's always so scary. Like I don't know what it is about like ghosts with chains. You know what I mean? Like it's such a strange, because if you can't stick it with the pointy end because it's a ghost, how is it carrying ghost chains? Right?
Yeah.
Like
And you're hearing them, you know, you're hearing the clanking.
yeah, not
And
about it.
Yeah, they just like, however you can exude hopelessness, you know, like they have no empathy. They probably won't really react to anything. If you recognize one of these, you can probably attempt to interact, and you might need to roll really, really high to try and convince them that like they know you. And like it would just be a very sad scenario to observe these. And I think even if you're potentially going in somewhere and it's more of a sense of combat or intensity, these creatures won't even react to that. Like they are simply just migrating and milling around the Deathpact angel and are just like existing, just this creepy sea of creatures that you have to kind of sift your way through. And they probably wouldn't even react if like you tried to like touch them or like move past them. They would just kind of just be there, like hollow, like you said, Pepperina.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that bleeds right into like the next section, which is going to be like the role playing and like exploration clues. Anything that you would add to that, Peps?
Yeah, I mean, going into like the exploration and clues and stuff, you could get like maybe if before you see them, just like, have you ever been into a place that you think's haunted and you just feel like something is watching you? Like that sort of feeling. Before you actually know that they're there, you just feel like it's off. There's something here with you. You don't know what. Sort of a vibe. Yeah, role playing though, I think it would just be that emptiness. Like they wouldn't really talk, they wouldn't react. It would just be.
Yeah. Well, they exist for one purpose and one purpose only.
Yeah.
Right. I also feel like they wouldn't attack you. They would almost want to guide you to where the Deathpact angel is, right? Like bring you to where they are so that you can also like live in servitude to this angel, right? Like that's their whole purpose. So I feel like they wouldn't be aggressors. They would just be like these, and there'd be tons of them in my mind, just floating around in like these tombs or these cathedrals. Like if we think about where you would find them, like technically within the Ravnica book, they're specifically within a cathedral, but I feel like you can place them in any kind of like tomb or any kind of cathedral or religious space, right? Like anywhere where gods are worshipped, you can put a Deathpact angel there, which means that area will then be filled with these things. And it would just be common that they're there because it's just a part of this angel existence. For this to exist, to give you boons, these have to exist. And if you don't bother them, they won't bother you. And I think that would be the vibe I would want to have, almost going into a town for the exploration clues. You'd be like, guys, like you have ghosts all over the place. And they'll be like, yeah, that's normal. Like that's because of the god that's here. And it's like,
oh,
wow.
And then, yeah. And then if you have like, you know, your non-wise kind of impulsive barbarian of the group that just tries to take a swipe at one just to see what happens, like because of all of the immunities, resistances, nothing actually happens, but it may trigger, like if it gets swiped at and nothing actually happens, and then you just see all of the other ghosts that are in visual like turn and start looking, even though there probably won't be combat, but they all suddenly are extremely aware that you are all there. And just that to give that sense of like you may have just pissed something off.
Yeah. But I also feel like
50 of them that just turn and look at you slowly.
And like start hoarding in. Like they
wouldn't
and
just like slowly coming
and still
you.
With no emotion. They it's just like they've reacted because one of them was hit with something, but they've just turned and now are migrating towards it. Oh yeah. I don't want to be there.
Because like, if I feel like if they felt you were being aggressive, they would attack in the sense of like, I am going to protect my god. So they would probably start just forming this large wall of themselves between you and where the Deathpact angel is, so that you can't get to her. Because they'll be like, okay, well, if you're going to be aggressive, then you can't come in, you know? Like,
you're not welcome anymore.
And like to portray that with and try and describe it with like zero emotion. Like they are not going to be intimidating or aggressive. They are just, like they only have that one task. So like that would bring a really eerie thing to it if you could pull it off as a DM.
100%. All right, what do we got next?
Next, we have the Phantom Warrior. So the Phantom Warrior is a spectral version of a soldier or knight who died in the lines of battle or died fulfilling their sworn duty. Details on the Phantom Warrior can be found in the Curse of Strahd book. So unlike a ghost, it is unable to pass over due to something unresolved or a god keeping it in the living world or being a servant. It has actually chosen to stay as a spirit and continue doing its duties. A Phantom Warrior usually will rise within 24 hours following its death. And as an example, if, say, they were a soldier that was guarding a wall or guarding a door, if they died doing that, they can return as a Phantom Warrior and then will just continue to guard the wall or door indefinitely by choice. It does remember how it died and retains only short-term memories, specifically 1d10 plus 10 days before it died. So it will remain at the same alignment, but it will have no memory of potentially like family, how it grew up, where it came from, none of that. It really will only remember basically its duties that it was doing when it died and just continue doing that. Even though they are translucent spirits, they can use the energy around them to defend against attacks, as though they have real armor or a shield as well, but they can still move through walls. So they have weapons, they have armor and shields visually, but they are still spirits that can move through like stone and wood. They have undead nature where they do not require air, food, drink, or sleep, and are pretty interesting. So let's get into some of the stats on this thing.
Is that a fire truck outside your house?
Like it is active out there today, and I even closed the window.
Oh, baby.
Oh, boy. All right, so the Phantom Warrior are medium undead, and they are any alignment because they will be the same alignment as they were in life. They have an AC of 16 due to the spectral armor and shield they have, HP of 45, and a speed of 30 feet. They are a challenge rating of 3. For stats, the highest stats are Charisma at +2 and Strength and Con at +3. Dex and Wisdom are average at +0, and Intelligence sits below average at -1, which I think tracks with their memory loss and also their ability to use the energy around them and still be task driven. So they know one thing only, but yeah, they don't really have a recollection of even probably why they're doing that or any insight into that part. They are skilled in Perception at +2 and Stealth at +4. And they have some damage resistances and immunities I'll go through too. So damage resistances to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks. Damage immunities of cold, necrotic, and poison, which is pretty standard, I would say at this point. Condition immunities to charmed, exhaustion, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, and restrained.
We love ghosts for this reason.
Yeah.
They also have dark vision of 60 feet and a passive perception of 12, and it will know the languages it knew in life. So you definitely get the sense of like they are a fraction of what they were in life, but really have no sense of loyalty or history or family in that sense. They're just doing the job that they know they have been doing.
That they signed up for. Yeah.
So hopefully it's not the worst job that they've just decided, no, I haven't fulfilled this yet. I'm just going to keep doing bedpans for the rest of
Yeah.
But that's, could you imagine like the time frame that you rolled was like the one day, like they have one day of their past memory where it's just like, I decided to do this for the rest of my life. And then that's what they do for the rest of their life.
Oh, God.
Their unlife.
Yeah, more than likely, this will be a warrior or a knight, though, that has been doing something a little bit more worthwhile. So in terms of abilities, they have something called ethereal sight. It can see 60 feet into the ethereal plane while it's on the material plane, and vice versa. And it has incorporeal movement. So just like ghosts, it can move through other creatures, but instead of stat damage, the target takes 1d10 force damage if it ends its turn inside an object. So I think that is the same as the one you talked about, Megan, where moving through, always bad. Stopping is extra bad.
just ghost things. You know what I mean? It's just ghostings.
In terms of actions, they have a spectral longsword, which is a +5 to hit, 5-foot reach in one target, and on a hit deals 1d8 +3 force damage. So this is really leaning into it's pulling energy from around it, and it just uses force damage and like for energy and all of that. It does get multi-attack, so it can make 2 attacks with its longsword, and it has etherealness, so it can move between the ethereal and material planes, and it is visible on the material plane while it is in border ethereal and vice versa. So it can kind of move and you can observe it moving between planes. But while it's in border ethereal, it cannot be affected and it cannot affect anything else. So it can kind of go into this like gray area where like you can no longer attack it, but it also can't attack you.
Yeah, it's just like in a video game when a button goes gray and you can't touch it. Nope. You do not have enough points to do this.
We haven't really talked too much about planar movement with many of our creatures. So I think this is kind of the first one we're diving into that. So other than that, there is one other variant of the Phantom Warrior that you can encounter in a specific part of the Curse of Strahd story. It is in the mansion of the silver dragon Argynvost called Argynvost Holt. Phantom warriors are guards in the beacon turrets, and they have, in addition to the spectral longsword, they have a spectral longbow, which they can do multi-attack with. So that gives them then the option to use the longsword or longbow for 2 attacks. The longbow has +2 to hit, a range of 150 to 600 feet with 1 target, and on a hit does again 1d8 force damage. So yeah, we're seeing, piercing and slashing weapons, but they only do force damage. Yeah, and that is the Phantom Warrior.
I think those 2 variations make sense, because then you kind of have like your regular sword warrior and then your ranged warrior. Like you have an option to do either or. So no matter what character falls or dies or decides to take this kind of an oath of servitude and death, you can flavor it to whatever kind of warrior you had, right?
Totally.
So
Yeah.
Cool. All right, ladies, let's raise some dice.
11.
13.
Nat 1.
Atta girl. So proud of you.
Oh,
all right.
God.
Well, I'll kick us off then with
Nice.
some sweet quest ideas. I enjoy the idea that you've gone to like a complete and total desolate area, and there's just this one warrior that's just left. And like they don't look ethereal. There's just a warrior standing at the gate, right? And then you'd be like, okay, well, like there's nothing here for you to guard. And it's just like, again, I only have 1 day of my past life memory, and I dedicated my life to standing guard here. It reminds me of like I talk about the labyrinth every once in a while, like the David Bowie labyrinth, but it reminds me of like Ambrosius and like his dog or whatever that are in like the bog of eternal stench, and his job is just to guard this bridge. And there's no reason for him to guard this bridge. He's just there. And then he says, you can't pass without my permission, and like starts getting like angry with the people trying to cross the bridge. And then like, and at the end of like a verbal scuffle, finally one of them's like, do we have your permission? And he's like, yes. And then everybody crosses the bridge. Like that's the kind of interaction I see in my head. Not necessarily so haunting in this, because I love going for like super haunting when it comes to what we're talking about. Like, because we're talking about the undead, ethereal ghosts, scary shit. I find this one to be funny as fuck. And I think it would be a good way to add a little bit of humor into like a somewhat serious storytelling, right? Like if you are playing a dark and sinister storyline with a lot of death and a lot of hurt and a lot of pain and a lot of, samurai sadness, it's just like, it would be I find I would add one of these in there for comedic relief, to be honest with you. What about you, Peps?
Yeah, I sort of had like a sort of similar idea, just that the thing that they're guarding doesn't need guarded anymore. But they don't know that. And it's having to like try and talk them into like, yeah, you've done a great job guarding this for 100 years, but like the whole family that you're guarding it for is gone. And so you don't need to be here. Like there's no reason for you to be here anymore. Like, I don't know, maybe somebody bought that property and are like, well, we really need in there.
Yeah.
But we have this problem, so I don't know if you could go take care of it for us.
I feel like that would be like a super sad way to introduce that, because like you would have like maybe like a family in a mansion or something like that, and like the butler warrior or whatever decided, I will devote my life to this family and I will serve them for the rest of my life, and then does the thing, and then they now guard this family.
Yeah.
Family moves.
Yeah.
And they're just like, okay, well, the family I was meant to spend my life guarding is gone. And now they just roam the halls of this fucking mansion. And like, that's just one of the ghosts that's in this mansion, is it looking for the family that it's supposed to be protecting. So it's not necessarily going to be aggressive towards you, but it would tell you a very sad tale, right?
Yeah. And there will be huge gaps in their story, right? Because they might not quite even remember like how long they've been there or everything. They will remember like the family name, but details will be gone. And I think there is the potential here too that like they know languages, they have chosen to remain and do this duty, that if you can roll high enough or be convincing enough, you could like give them insight that what they're doing is no longer applicable. Like you could be tasked, like you said, Peps and Megan, like it's been guarding a mansion that is empty and they haven't been able, because of poor rolls or whatever, like no one has been able to convince them to move on, or that the family is gone or the family is dead. And so you're tasked with somehow we need to convince them that their job is no longer needed. And you can go about that a few different ways. You can do it by trying to just talk to them and convince them, just move on, man. Like, just let it go. You could also convince them that their shift is over, and convince them that someone else is taking over their role. And that is how they can move on. It's like, no, we have this whoever coming in to replace you as guard or replace you as like patrol. So you no longer need to do this, and then convince them to, move on that way. But it could be a lot of like more your charismatic characters that are like coming to shine in these moments, or not, and be like, man.
Or they fail all their rolls and then you have to get your tanks in there.
Yeah.
Dude, like I just had another really fun idea. Speaking to like adding on to what you're saying, Casey, about like it being attached to like a family, or how you're saying it's attached to a mansion. Let's say that family moved away. It had a daughter or a kid. Everybody has a tragic backstory of their house that burned down, or their parents that died, or what have you. Your character returns to your old stomping grounds, goes to where your childhood home was, and like there's this ghost guard standing there and they recognize you. And then you now have a haunt, like basically in Elphaba it's called You Are Now Haunted, but like you now have a haunting of this ghost, but they're built to protect you.
Yeah.
Like,
or they don't recognize you because when you left, you were a small child and now you're an adult. Yeah. And you have to convince them that this is your house.
I am who I say I am.
Yeah. Or they think you are the mom or you are the dad because you look very similar to them. And it's like, wait, you're not quite her, but you look really, really like her. I don't understand.
You have the essence of her. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
All right. Existential horror, body horror kind of stuff. I find with these ones, one of the things, if I wanted to make it more horror-esque, is depending on how they died, they would still have that wound. So if they died in battle and like had their head cut off, they are carrying their head around. If they lost their arm is like tucked, like it's hanging from their belt, like because they picked it up and it's just like hanging there, but they can't attach it. You know what I mean? So like I feel like I would play on that if I was going to bring one of these into the game, is like, how did you die? Because that stays with you.
Yeah.
What about you, Peps?
I think I would play around with their ability to like jump through different, like the ethereal plane and their like border plane and stuff, and just have that like moment where a hand comes out of nowhere and then like this body steps out behind it. And you don't know where it came from. You just all of a sudden see something go through something, and like in the middle of a field or a room, like not necessarily just through a wall, but just out of nowhere, you see a hand and then a thing emerge after it. I think I would play around with that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's totally where I went to, was like play with the planar movement and completely mess around with your highly like perceptive players where it's like, no, I rolled like 20. Where did this thing come from? It came from the center of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that painting in the corner is not a real painting. Yeah.
Yeah. And Megan, I really liked how you said from potentially far away or even up close, they don't necessarily look like a spirit or ghost-like. I immediately went to like Sixth Sense, where they like, yes, they know that they are like, they've died, they remember that, and they're doing this. But perhaps for interactions, they wouldn't. They would just be like, well, I am guarding this, or I patrol this area, and so I need to stop you. You can't go in. And it's just like this disheveled mansion behind them. It's like, what is happening? And then it takes a while for you to realize that this is a spirit, not just some like crazed guy.
Yeah, it's gonna be like your warlock or your necromancer that's gonna be like, That might be a dead guy.
Yeah.
All right, role playing and exploration cruise ideas. So they're gonna have a one-track mind. I think is the easiest way to role play these out. Like they're gonna have one role, one specific thing that they talk about. They don't really care what you're doing as long as you aren't getting in the way of their duty and their job. I think that's the only way they would become an aggressor is if you are actively doing something against what they told themselves they're going to do for the rest of their life, right? And I mean, I like how we like discuss like, yeah, they're probably like guarding some kind of a mansion and they have this like big to-do job, but really it just might be a goblin who counts coins. You know what I mean? Like his job is to make sure that the treasury is intact. Right. Like, this is it's gonna be boring and shit too, right? Like it doesn't have to be overly exciting, like in any way, shape, or form, but it's just
they
like,
just decided they weren't done yet. So
yeah, they're like
stuck
no,
around.
I love my job. I'm going to keep doing my job for the rest of my life. My job is to count these coins, and I'm going to count these coins. My job is to pull my boss's hair out of their bathtub. That is what my job is, and I will do that for the rest of my life for this person. But yeah, again, one track mind. That's the only thing I can really like emphasize with these. But what about you, Peps?
Yeah, I think it would almost like if you tried to have a conversation with them to try and figure out what's going on, it would almost reach a frustrating point because they only have that short memory. So you're going to try to get more information out and they only have a very specific amount. Yeah. And like your party's going to be like, but why? But why are you here? Or where did you come from? What is going on? And they're like, I know these 3 things. And that's all I could tell you.
That's all you got. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Casey?
Yeah, completely agree. Like that short-term memory will be hilarious to role play, frustrating. And it is what it is. It's like, I don't know what else to tell you. You know, it's like, I'm doing this because I have. Yes.
Yeah.
And in terms of exploration and clues, my mind went to like Lord of the Rings, you know, the ghosts under the mountain that Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli go get. So not necessarily like I know they are stuck there because of like other reasons not relating to how this one would be by choice, but when they are walking and trying to find them, there was like that haunting, like eerie moans and like shudders under the mountain and like lots of like skeletons and skulls and stuff. But it was like that eerie sound that like I remember the first time I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. Like, and like how Gimli's like, fuck this, I don't want to be in here.
Yeah. Wasn't their whole thing too like that they had to convince them that like because their job was to serve like the one king or whatever, and then they had to convince them that yes, he is the king. You owe him servitude, basically. And that's yeah. Very much these.
Yeah. And so I think like if you ended up having, you know, like because it could be a captain and a legion of soldiers who got wiped out for whatever reason and are just incomplete, like no, that like we failed, but we're sticking around to try and keep doing this. And so then you might have, you know, they're trying to deter you from coming into the area, and you're gonna get that creepy, like definitely someone's watching you, some eerie sounds, some like just ghostly shudders that are coming out from seemingly nowhere because they could be in another plane and like surrounding you or walking with you. You just can't see them yet.
Yeah, they're just waiting to see what you're going to do first.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get like this far, they just pop up in front of you and it's like, wait, hold on. And like you have no idea where they came from.
Final thoughts and or combat ideas. I think the only thing that I would add is that like this would be a really cool thing as a DM to offer a player if their character dies. Be like, your character could live on in the campaign as this kind of a warrior. Roll me 1d10 to find out how long your memory is and tell me what your task would be. And then now your character still lives within the world, but they are now tasked with one thing. And it could be my task is like let's say my character and Casey's character were best friends. And I'm like, well, my job for the rest of my life will be to protect this person. And then now you have your PC is now an NPC that is following somebody around in Servitude. Right.
Mhm.
Love it. And they can just
Yeah.
be in another plane.
Yeah.
Very convenient. It's like, we'll pop you out when we need you.
Put you in a jar, you know?
Yeah. I think for like combat and stuff, I would definitely play around with the different planes and that. Especially if you have players that like to use like the blink spell or the rangers that can go to the ethereal plane. You know, if you have a party like that, I would definitely throw these in. Like you blink into the other plane, and there's one of these guys just standing there.
Like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My bad. Like
Or just like you walk into, if they're supposed to be guarding this tomb or, you know, this wall or something like that, you walk through the door and an arrow shoots out of the middle of the room, and it's them shooting through the ethereal plane, a warning shot at you. But like, where did that arrow come from? You know, so I would have them jumping in and out, I think, during combat, back and forth. You don't know where they're at. You don't know exactly where they've went. Unless you happen to blink over there, which then you're alone. I've done that before with the blink spell in a haunted house.
Yes.
Where I went to the ethereal plane and there's a ghost looking at me and I am stuck here now and it's moving towards me.
Yeah, and the ghost is like, I'm sorry, this is my home.
Yeah, what are you what are you doing here?
New fear unlocked. Thanks, Peps.
Yeah. Careful where you blink to. Just saying.
Yeah.
Apparently my DM got tired of my bullshit.
Tired of your bullshit. Ghosts.
Yeah, and I do really like that they have weapon attacks, but they do force damage only, because that is one, I've said this before, it's noticeably one of the few damage types that are like most races or classes don't have resistance or immunity to that. That is one that is really hard to go against. So they will probably take a lot of hits because of all of their resistances and immunities, but then their attacks will always probably hit and like do damage.
Yeah.
Like no matter what. So it could be pretty dicey and frustrating.
Yeah, because it's a ghost sword. It's not a, you know what I mean? It's not like a real blade that's sharp. So you're not going to get slashing damage. It makes sense that you just get like hit with a ghost bat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
you're just like thrown across the room and you don't actually get like a wound. You're just tossed.
Exactly.
I like it.
All right. What's next?
Okay, that's me. And I have the Phylaskia. I don't know if that's saying it right, but that's how I say it in my head. Phylaskia.
It's like kind of like phylactery, but Phylaskia.
Phylactery. Phylaskia. I'm saying it as Midwest as possible. So the lore on Phylaskia is only about 2 sentences long in the Mythic Odysseys of Theros. Basically, they are guards of the underworld. Like most of the undead we cover, they don't need air, food, drink, or sleep. So they really make the perfect guard, as they never need to go off duty. Should you come across one, they will show no mercy and will heavily judge you. Should you choose not to obey their orders, they will not hesitate to kill you. Looking at them, they are a large undead, so they will be taller than pretty much all of your party. They are heavily armed skeletons wearing plate armor and carrying a longsword. In the artwork, they have glowing purple eyes. Their armor has depictions of beasts on the shoulders and helmet, and they have chains hanging off of them and scraps of fabric from their belt. I feel it's important to give just a brief description of the underworld here so that we know exactly what it is they may be guarding. The underworld has different wards in each, and it's seemingly vast and endless in each of these wards. Depending on who you were in life is which ward you go to in death. There's one for heroes, one for those lost at sea, one for those who committed unforgivable crimes, and even one for those who just weren't very impressive in life. It is nearly impossible to travel these wards by foot, but it is possible to find portals and even to bargain with demons to help you get around or even attempt an escape. However, it's not going to be as simple as just walking through a portal, and that's where the Phylaskia come into play. Looking at their stats, like I said, they are a large undead. They are lawful neutral, and their CR is 9. They have plate armor, which gives them an AC of 18, an average of about 104 hit points, and a 40-foot movement. Strength is their highest stat with a +5, then their constitution is a +4, wisdom has a +3, and dex and charisma has a +2. Their intelligence is average with a +0. For saving throws, they get a +8 to constitution and a +7 to wisdom. Skills, they get +7 to insight and perception. They are immune to necrotic and poison damage, and to the conditions of blind, charm, deafen, exhaustion, frightened, and poisoned. They have true sight for 120 feet, which really plays into their vigilant ability, which means they cannot be surprised. And rounding out their stats, they speak all languages. Along with the vigilant ability, they also have Gatekeeper's Aura. Any creature that starts its turn within 10 feet of the Phylaskia must make a wisdom save. On a successful save, you are immune to this aura for 24 hours. On a failed, you have disadvantage on saving throws, and your speed is halved until the start of your next turn. They also get Undead Fortitude, which we've seen in some undead creatures in the past. This allows them to make a Constitution save. If they reach 0 hit points, the DC is 5 plus the damage taken, unless it's radiant or a crit. If they succeed, they drop to 1 HP instead. For actions, they get a multi-attack with 2 long swords and 1 strength drain. Their longsword gets a +9 to hit and has a reach of 10 feet. On a hit, it does 2d8 plus 5 slashing, or 2d10 plus 5 if they are using it two-handed, plus 2d10 necrotic damage. On top of that, they can also use Strength Drain once, which is another melee weapon attack with a +9 to hit and a 5-foot reach. On a hit, it does 2d6 plus 5 necrotic damage. Unless the target is immune to necrotic damage, they also take a d4 reduction to their strength score. If your strength is reduced to 0, then you die. Otherwise, the reduction lasts until the end of a short or long rest.
Ability score hit. That's
Yeah.
the worst.
That's a big one. That's a big, especially if you're like hitting a wizard or something like that, does not have much strength. Like a wizard with your average or lower strength, that takes you down in 2 hits if you roll good,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't fight it.
Don't fight it. Don't fight these ones. The aura gives me like Undead Paladin vibes.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely like one of their like popped auras or whatever. And
Yeah.
like their attacks technically kind of read as smites to me too. Like but yeah, I definitely get that feel. Interesting.
Right, so that's the Phylaskia.
All right. Ladies, let's raise some dice to the Phylaskia.
Phylaskia.
4.
16.
7.
Amazing. I love this for us. All right, Peps, cool quest
Yes.
idea. Start us off.
Quest ideas. So, like I said, these are primarily in the underworld is where you're going to find them. I would definitely have either your party has went down to the underworld to find somebody, a spirit that they need to bring back, or one of your party members has died and is there and trying to get out. This could be a very interesting if your party member dies in this setting and is sent to the underworld and they have to find people to help them get out, and you could have like a one-off with just 1 or 2 players that died in a combat previously.
Yeah.
And they have to deal with this, and the rest of your party is still up there not knowing what's going on. So you're trying to wander the underworld and get out.
Yeah. I love the idea that you think they're going to be on the hero's plane and they're not. So you learn a little bit about their back history, depending on what level of hell they end up on. You know what I mean? Yeah. What about you, Casey?
Yeah, I don't know. I imagine these come in pairs. You didn't say that, did you, Peps?
No, it does. Like I said, you get 2 sentences. Laura, I had to really pull.
So you can do whatever you want, Casey.
So you do you.
Yeah, like I imagine these yeah, more than likely in the applicable location, but it could be like they are guarding just like a very evil or very dark portal that potentially people have forgotten about for thousands of years. And I imagine I'm going to Never Ending Story again. That's another one that comes up a lot where they have perhaps been there for so long that they look like stone or they haven't moved in a really long time. So it's like two guards that just don't look real or living, or can move, essentially, sitting there. And it's only when you reach a certain point that they are triggered, but they are seeing you the whole time. You could try and stealth your way through. You could try and go in. If somebody gains insight that they are like, no, those are guards, like we don't want to fight them, try and skirt by. It will never work. Try and surprise attack. Let's at least get one round of attacks on these things before like we go into full combat. Won't work. All of these things that like you can do so much strategy and then you stroll up and it all just goes out the fucking window because these things are scary.
Yeah.
Scary as shit.
Yeah. I love it. Like I've been in a campaign where we did the whole classic, we went down to the 9 hells and we had to like work our way from the ground plane up, basically. And we didn't have these there, which now I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, that could have been a great thing to place. Like we were playing in like a homebrewed version of what the underworld looked like, because like the 9 hells is a different way of looking at it, but there are different areas of, you know, this version of hell as well. But I like the idea that there's different levels and different, like there would be a guard at the beginning of the entrance of each level, right? And each guard for each Phylaskia will be a different style of guard depending on which plane it's guarding, right? Whether they're like a little bit softer, whether a little bit harder, whether they're going to be a little bit more aggressive, whether they're going to talk to you or just jail you right away. Like they'll have different attitudes. So that bleeds right next like to like the role playing aspect of it. It's like in my mind, it depends on what area of hell they are guarding. In my mind, would depict what their personality style is going to be like and how they're going to interact with your players when they just rock up to like the gates of fucking hell. You know what I mean? But I remember it being like a lot of fun where it was like we were almost playing like in an escape room. Almost was the first level. We were all jailed. And we had clues in each one of our rooms that we had to like figure out how to get ourselves out of the jail. And then like, but in my mind, the guards could have been these Phylaxia things, like, right? But so in my mind, I'm like, now I would plop those in there if I ever ran that campaign again. Like it just seems really fitting. But existential horror.
I mean, looking at the artwork, they are very scary looking guys. And they're huge. Like they're large creatures. So if you've got, you know, a gnome in your party, they're quite larger than most of your party's gonna be. So they'll just like overwhelming size of them, I think would be a good thing to play off of. They're just gonna make you feel very small.
Yeah, and they're not gonna try and intimidate. They are just going to attack. So it's like as soon as they see, like you could play it off as like, yeah, like they've been waiting. And then suddenly they see you. There is no like waiting for you to like, if you lock eyes, they're coming after you. So like charging, driving right up to your party. It's going to be very scary and you're going to be like, oh shit, we are in deep trouble, especially if there's more than one.
Yeah. No, I also like just like thought of like the fact that I like Norse shit, and like I'm writing a campaign right now for like that's revolving around Valkyries, and like in my mind I'm like it'd be really cool that this, instead of like the classic guardian of a Valkyrie, these are just Valkyries of hell instead of Valhalla, and then they have these Phylaxia things that like are their guards. So when they come to reap the souls and bring them to the proper levels of hell, these things are with them. And if you can't fight the Valkyrie without fighting this kind of thing. And now in my head, I'm like, I want to put these in there.
And that's a good point. Like in this, and I did, some Google searches and looked at some other sites. I could not find any other lore on these at all. But I think you could very much put them in other settings. Like they are right now strictly in the underworld as guardians, but like you said, you could definitely put them in other places and give them a little different flavor, because it doesn't say how they were created or who they once were, so you could add, as a DM, you could add so much to these, I think.
Yeah, it's basically all they're doing is guarding things that are of the undead, and they have really cool abilities, right? Like even looking at the artwork, they look very skeletal, you know what I mean? Like there's Casey's face. But like you could, in my mind, they would look like anything you want them to look like, right? And like to my point, like we're gonna talk about role playing next, but like in my mind, if they're on a certain level of hell, they might not be an undead skeleton looking. They might be like a demon, like, or an oni, or something along those lines too, right? Just with the abilities that come along with being on Phylaskia.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. That being said, then rolling right into role playing. Or exploration clues.
They speak all languages. So like there's not any sort of block there like we've found with other undead creatures where they speak only one specific language or can't speak. While their intelligence, I think, was average, they did have an above average charisma on them. So I think talking to them is definitely like it says that they will judge you and then decide if they're gonna kill you, sort of thing. So they would definitely like stop would be their first, like if you're getting too close to whatever they're guarding. And if you don't listen to that, then straight combat. If you do, then you can talk to them and try and convince them. But you're gonna have to be extremely careful with your wording, because if you say one thing they don't like, combat. They will not hesitate to jump into combat if they get the weirdest little sense from you.
Yeah, the judgiest NPC.
Right, like you have to be rolling straight 20s the whole time or you're combat.
Yeah, we'll bring up that time that you stole a sandwich once.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can pretty much roleplay this as a like raging, hormonal, arrogant, giant asshole. Like get it in while you can against your party.
Yeah, this would definitely be like you could play them super chaotic stupid, right? Like, or like lawful stupid, but in the worst way. Because like what they're being lawful for is probably not necessarily lawful, because you're in hell, right?
You're in hell. I mean,
like,
it's their law. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like I'm sorry, this is my job actually to judge you. So
how insulting would it be then if they're like, you don't belong, like you're in the hero one and they're like, you don't belong here, and they take you to just the like average person.
The average, yeah. That's it's like I was gonna say that when you first started describing them. I was just like, that'd be so fucking hilarious that if your party dies, they rock up to like hell, and then you find out through conversation with other people there that you're like in the mundane level of hell.
Yeah, you're the very much like you're just tasked with doing random like
you are no threat to anyone.
Things. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Casey.
Oh man.
Role playing or exploration? Yeah.
In terms of clues, I think more than likely if you're going to the underworld, you may have gained insight that, the gates or the wards will be guarded. So you might have an idea of you're going to encounter something that you're going to have to potentially fight or try and skirt around and get through. But there may not be that many clues of what exactly these creatures are until you actually are face to face with them.
Yeah.
I think you could, like, if you want to play a really fun combat heavy one shot or piece of a campaign where, like, I liked how you said it's lots of different types that are guarding, but they're all the Phylaskias. You could have like slightly different environmental cues, and maybe you're keeping an eye out to try and find the guard in those environments, but they keep changing, and say you have to go through like 5 different levels, and you know that there's a guard there, but so you're trying to find it and seek it out, but every time you're in a different level, it changes. So you could play around with that a bit.
That's true. I love it.
Mhm.
All right, final thoughts or combat ideas, Pepperina.
I mean, their combat is crazy. Don't
Mhm.
again, don't
Don't fight it.
don't fight it if you can't. Like we said, you can't surprise attack them. They can pop back up after they go down. They have the aura, which gives you disadvantage and halves your speed, and they have a movement of 40, so that's already above average of what. So if your monk gets hit with that and it halves their speed, and these things have a 40 speed, like that really evens that playing field. Like that takes away what the monk does.
Yeah.
You know, and they have the 10-foot reach, so they don't even have to be that close to you to hit you twice, and then they can move in and hit you with the strength drain. So
yeah,
it's nasty. It's nasty. Don't do it.
What about you?
Yeah,
Kizzy?
that strength drain, definitely got to use it. This is,
Yeah.
you know, those times you use that ability. And I think you could like role play the combat a lot with these because they speak so many languages. They have the high charisma. Like it may state like, I'm going to suck your strength. You're the strongest. I will suck your strength, and then do life drain and actually suck the strength out of your barbarian or your fighter. Or like if it comes up and gets within range of like your squishies, like your wizards, and it just is like grabs the top of its head and just sucks the strength, and then suddenly your wizard's down in like 2 rounds.
Mhm.
You know, you could just, it could be really scary and really bad really fast because of just that ability, let alone everything else it has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if you get away, then you have to find a place in the underworld to take a rest to get that strength back. Like
Yeah, I was gonna
that in
say.
itself is going to be very difficult to do.
Yeah, I love people always say it'll go away with like a nice evening time rest. It's like, yes, but try and find a place to find 8 hours of sleep in hell. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good
luck.
No, I think my only final thoughts on combat would definitely be if they're going to, once they decide to fight you, they're going to show their strength right away.
Mhm.
There won't be any pussyfooting around. They're going to get up into your face and they're going to hit you as hard as they can, and they're going to suck the life out of you as fast as they can. They don't have time for your shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've got a full-time job. So they're just like, get out of my fucking way. You're being an idiot. Remove thyself is what,
Mhm.
or I will remove thyself for you. So I'm going to talk about a couple of other like undead servant options that are within the books. But obviously in my mind, after going through this, you could basically make any undead creature a servant of something at some point somewhere, because it tends to be done with magic. Ta-da! But the ones I'm going to talk about today come from the Tomb of Annihilation. The first one is going to be the Tomb Dwarves, which are basically a dwarf mining group that were captured by a Sararak and then turned basically into wights and then utilized to build tombs and tunnels of their lair. Because the Sararak is like, you know how to do this thing. So instead of just asking you to do that thing, I'm going to just capture you, turn you undead, and then make you do the thing for your whole life. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. But yeah, as I mentioned, you can basically find them wandering and patrolling the tombs of the 9 gods. And their stat block does shift a little bit depending on where you come across them. Kind of like what we were just kind of talking about the Phylaskias in the Undead. In my mind, you could change their stat block based on where you find them. These ones actually do. Not by a lot. Like there's not a lot to their stat block because basically they are a basic wight. But you're either putting an axe in their hand or you're putting like a bow in their hand kind of thing. We did cover Sararak and wights in previous episodes. So if you want more details around those, feel free to listen to those episodes. But the key thing to note, because they're wights, they have life drain. So these little dwarves are just happily building these tombs, all of a sudden dead.
Don't get in their way.
Don't get in their way. They have a job. They have a full-time job to do, and they don't have time for your shit. Yeah.
They don't have time for your building codes and
Yeah,
your
fuck
OSHA
you.
violations.
I don't need no permit. All right. Then there's also what they're called blind artists. This one I actually found particularly interesting, and I actually noted it for me to use on a later date. These folks, again, are found in the Tomb of Annihilation, but you will basically find 3 of them within the throne room in particular. They're also servants of a Sararak, and even though blind, they are there to paint and depict awful paintings of carnage and death that have happened throughout history. So when you're in this room, one is painting big paintings of like historical events that have occurred. The other two are specifically painting paintings of what your players and group have done within the tombs before getting here. So you'll see paintings of like, say one of your characters, one of your players died in the tombs. There will be a painting of that in this room, which I thought was really fucking cool.
Yeah.
So, for stats, however, they are just a basic zombie stat block, except they have blind sight of 30 feet. So yes, they're not that strong. We've talked about regular zombies quite a bit. They're bones, you know? But spoiler alert, if you attack the painters or disrupt them, a zombie T-Rex will appear from the ground, and that is what you have to fight.
Love it. Love it.
It kind of gives
my
me
God.
it kind of gives me the vibe that these ones aren't meant to fight. They are just like painting historians that Acererak has kept around to like paint depictions of like his, you know, nonsense. So he doesn't want them to die, but like they're not strong. So he protects them with a T-Rex.
I need one of those for when I'm painting minis and my whole family's asking me to make dinner or get them this.
Mom!
Just a T-Rex pops up. Deal with that. I'm
Boom. T-Rex. But yeah, that's pretty much the only two that I was going to go over here. Let's just raise a dice and ask a question or two.
Okay.
3. Great.
4.
10. How did I get first with a 10?
Good job, everybody. I'm so proud. All right. When and how would you include these in a campaign as a DM?
There's so many options here.
Yeah.
So fun. I would kind of want to blend the angle of the Phantom Warrior with the blind artists, in that they became blind artists do that endlessly by choice. Where maybe there's Phantom Warriors guarding this area as well, and then you come across these blind artists that are just working away, and they are starting to paint. They're midway through painting your battle with one of the Phantom Warriors that was just outside, and you're like, what the hell? We just did that. How is it painting that? And you could do that anywhere. They could be painting in a mansion. They could be painting on the walls of caves that you're trying to navigate. Like, you could kind of put them in different scenarios, I think. Oh, they're so much fun. Yeah, I was definitely drawn to those. And the Tomb Dwarves, love that you could have them in hordes just doing what they're doing, and you could even be navigating through their region while they're just working away. And like, they may acknowledge you, may not, but they're just like walking by, and you kind of have to skirt your way through, and just the creepy horrorness of that would be really fun to drop. And you could do that. They could be like working for any type of big bad evil guy that you want them to.
Yeah, love it. Peps.
Yeah, I mean, the Tomb Dwarfs, I think, would come in handy with a lot of big bads. You could have liches, necromancers, dragons, just anything that has like a lair could have these building their lair. You know, you like go to the lair and they're like expanding it. You see them building the wizard's tower, or like creating the cave that the dragon's in, and like setting it up and digging out into the mountain for their hoard room and things like that. Like, it's the dragon's new lair, because we know they have multiples at this point. So it's, I need a new one over here. You guys are gonna go over there. And
I need one for my babies.
Yeah.
No, I didn't want to
dig them around.
Yeah, just like it would be like the West Wing is being expanded. No one going to the West Wing, you know what I mean? Like,
and for the blind artists, I would like I said, you could also put those in just about any, you know, big bad's lair or anything like that. I would have them painting, like, we've all come up against like a haunted painting in a creepy room, and you look at it and it seems not quite right. This is what painted that. This is why that ghost is stuck in that painting. They put it there. So I would give that sort of flavor to it.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. If I was to use the painting artists, I would definitely do like their paintings are living paintings. So they're constantly ebbing and flowing and changing once the painting is set and done. And like I've played it in video games before, and I've like seen it happen on like TV series where people end up falling into paintings and then like them having to do something or solve something before they can be released from the painting. I feel like I would have them painting one of those paintings that you get stuck in, like an ethereal plane somewhere because you hopped into this painting or something.
Cool.
And then
I
for
would have like paintings on the walls that are their other paintings, and you have to like hop through a multitude of their paintings before you can find a way out of it. So you're like stuck in a past vision, somebody else's adventure that came to this place and they painted that, and now you're stuck in that reality.
Yeah, like your friend's spirit still exists, but it exists within this painting. And if you can get that spirit back, you can bring them back to life. So you have to go through all these paintings to try and find your friend.
Yeah.
Like that would be a lot of
and
fun.
it's like a puzzle where there's 5 paintings and one of them is the right one, but you may spend many an hour going through the other ones.
And I feel like the painters wouldn't have a problem with it either. They'd be like, they wouldn't be aggressive. It would be almost like a methodical conversation of, like, if you want to do this, go ahead. It's not going to be safe and we're not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. But absolutely, let's see this play out. Right?
Good luck. I'll paint the result over here.
But I feel like I would make them a big bad in the end, right? Like if you start destroying their paintings, then they're going to come after you at some point, right? Or you do get your friend's spirit out, but like at the cost of you've destroyed pieces of history that have been painted. And so now you are going to be accosted by these things for the rest of your life so you can write history or something like that. Like I would do a campaign based on this, like hands down.
You're forever waiting for a undead T-Rex to
I'm gonna pull out that undead T-Rex 100%. Is there any horrifying detail you would lean into these, like specifically at all that you found interesting?
I think they leave it pretty open to get as gory or horrifying as you want. You could easily tie in backstories. I think the artists and just what they paint and what you portray that as can be pretty horrifying. That's probably the target.
Yeah, I agree. I think the painters could be a little more horrifying than the dwarves. I don't know. I just see a colony of dwarves just doing their thing and they just happen to be dead.
They're just happy to have a job. You know what I mean?
Like they're just doing their dwarf thing. But I think like I would even put one of these painters in like a Call of Cthulhu game, I think. Yeah. Like it could fit into a lot of different like horror games and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I was even thinking like even for L5R, like arts in like Rokugan and L5R it's a very tricky subject. So I feel like it would be really, really easy to put something like this into an L5R campaign as well. That there's just a spirit that paints depictions and things like that. Like, anyways, you could place it, I think, in any role-playing game, in any like anywhere in your campaign. You can, if you just need a filler episode. Yeah. You go into a town, you come across a painter. You know what I mean? Like you could put them in anywhere. Like they don't have to just be a Sararak servants. They can just exist in the world. Right? Yeah. All right. That's it.
Cool.
All right. So on a scale of 1 to 10 infinite loops, how would you rank these undead servants as a part of the undead landscape in D&D 5th edition? First up, we have the Indentured spirits.
These bitches are just fodder. I give them a 4.
Yeah. Like, if there's only one of them, then very, like, a 1, you know? But if there's, like we said, if you have, like, 100 of them around, I think the amount of them goes up. Like, levels their score up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
But they're like the cockroach or the tick of fodder, because if you try and just wipe them out, like let's just try and get rid of these, they're gonna take way too long and be way too annoying.
Yeah.
It's like, God, what do I have to do to actually kill this thing? Yeah, but generally not that threatening in terms of this. So yeah, below 5.
What about the Phantom Warriors?
I don't find them that frightening, but again, to your point, I think if there were a lot of them, they would be a lot to handle. You're basically fighting a ghost version of like the skeleton warrior. So it does have more immunities, but they're not going to be that hard to down unless there's a horde of them in my mind. So I would probably around a 4 or 5 for me as well. They seem very generic for the ghosty ghost world. Yeah.
I think their ability to jump in and out of different planes gives them just a little bit boost past average for me. Like,
it's true.
Maybe a 6 or so. I think if your DM plays it right, I think that could be very tricky for the party to handle. Just the jumping in and out.
Yeah, and something new, something that potentially you haven't thrown at them before in terms of like navigating an undead creatures.
Yeah. Not only that, but like navigating ethereal planes. Like if you don't have anybody on your team that can do that or has done it and you know nothing about it, it would be a little bit strange, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They like math confusion.
Yeah.
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 Where did they go? Where'd they come from? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. The Phylaskia.
So good.
They're like, you know what, they are
good.
really good. Like, and they again, to your point, Peps, your earlier point of like, this screams undead paladin to me. And I'm like, it does. And I fucking love paladins. And like the idea of fighting an undead paladin scares the shit out of me. So I gotta say, like, I gotta give it like a 7 or an 8. Like I'm not like body horror scared of them, but I don't want to fight one.
I don't want to fight one.
Yeah.
I think the first time you hit somebody and say, okay, you reduce your strength by 3, like that's gonna be the point where your party's gonna be like, fuck.
Yeah. In our recent campaign, we fought a lot of things that suck stats.
Uh-huh.
And all of it. And as soon as the first person goes down with a stat suck, we're all like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, how do I protect my brain? Like,
Yeah.
And 95% of the time it was Dan.
99.9% of the time.
Yeah, so I'd give these probably like an 8 or so. Like they definitely, I think, have a lot going for them. I wish there was more. I wish there was more to the lore than what I sort of made up and put out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're so beefy, and they, in my opinion, all the ones we talked about, these are the most like horrifying and intimidating visually as well. So I would put them, they're 8.5, 9 for me.
Yeah. All right, Tomb Dwarfs.
As they are, like whites, I think when we talked about whites, we rated whites technically pretty high because of like their life drain abilities. But like the fact that these are dwarves just doing their job, like it's a 1 for me, dog. Like,
yeah, I like them. I would like to just like come across them because I think they could be a lot of fun. But I'm not scared of them.
no.
Other than the life drain, I don't think they have too much scary things going on for them. So yeah, I'd say under 4 under. I'd say I want to find them though.
Yeah, I can go hunting for them.
I want to just see them doing their thing.
I think they would be that thing that you would essentially overlook, be kind of entertained, maybe feel a bit sorry for them, being like, wow, this is super shitty. Like, I feel bad for all of these. Then like one of the players, of course, tries to like push one or like talk, like just piss one off. And then it doesn't even really like, you don't go into combat, but it just like reaches out and does 1 hit of life drain.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, oh shit, Kate, never mind.
There's like 1,000 of them down there building whatever the fuck they're building. So like you get 1 person hit with life drain and you're like, nope.
I love the idea that like the fact that this isn't a visual platform, but all of us raise our hands like, nope.
We're backing off.
Hard pass. We're not doing it.
One day we'll have to release a video of.
Oh my
All
goodness.
right, and the blind artist.
I just think these are dope as fuck, so I want to give them a 10. But like from a fighting them standpoint, unless you get fucked up by a T-Rex, like nothing, you're gonna be able to kill them. You know what I mean? Yeah. But from a badass, you can add them anywhere kind of strategy. These are the ones I would want to use the most. So I'm just gonna give them a 10 because I love them.
Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah.
And well, just the fact that like, as if it's a T-Rex of all things.
Yeah, the T-Rex really.
Why was that chosen?
I do love the T-Rex aspect of it. It could have been anything. It could have been a Dracolich. It could have been
anything. Tyrannosaurus Rex. Here you go.
Yeah. And I guess to that end, you really could flavor that to just a really big, really powerful, like higher CR thing that
Mhm.
pops out that's applicable to your campaign.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, you could even put like a Phylaskia guarding it, or one of the Phantom Warriors, depending on your party's level,
Right.
sort of thing. If you didn't have T-Rexes in your world,
Yeah. Oh my God. A Phantom Warrior's duty is to just care for
Guard.
and take care of and guard this painter.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
So good.
yeah.
So wholesome, you know? Little dash of wholesomeness for
We
you.
always, we always tend to have a little sprinkle in these undeads.
You know what? Now it's time to close the crypt on this part of our conversation on Undead in D&D 5th edition. Stay tuned next month when we headed to Theros to see what terrible versions of undying fanatism looks like.
Thanks
Stupid
for
word.
listening to this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website, www.itsamimic.com, as well as a Patreon. If you'd like to discuss what you've heard here today, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and at r/itsamimic. For other episodes on other kinds of monsters, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
There you go. So now you can say all your embarrassing
Got
stuff in
it.
one go.
Got it. Perfect.
Yeah. Now's the time to confess because we're recording. Right?
Like we always do.
I feel like I got my monster on purpose just for my accent.
How do you say it? Like because I could
Okay.
barely even say it.
Do you remember how many A's I added to phylactery?
Yes.
Same concept. It's Phylaskia.
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 Oh, I love it.
Can't wait for that fucking mouthful for you.
Yeah. Like, I 100% gotta sign this on purpose.
Yeah. Sweet child. All right. Otherwise, we're ready to go. Anybody have any big announcements to make for the internet?
I don't think so. Not for
No.
the internet.
All right. Phenomenal.
This episode on the It's a Mimic channel is going to commit completely. Why? Oh,
Great
my-
start.
Fantastic. You got this. You got this.
This episode on the It's a Mimic channel is going to. It's because it says channel. Sorry, editor.
The exclamation point throws you off. Yeah.
Okay, I got this. Interesting.
Sorry, my cat's being a brat. I'm waiting to see if I'm going to kick him out or not.
Well, I got motorcycles raging down the road.
I heard one and I was just like, was that me? I was like, where am I?
Well, I heard that, and then you said your cat, and I was like, was that a cat?
You know what, Momo? I would not be surprised. Oh, well. All right, I know with that, now it is time to close the crypt on this part of our conversation on Undead in D&D 5th edition. Stay tuned next month when we head to Theros and see what terrible versions of undying phantasm... What fucking word is that? Fanatisms?
Fanaticism? No.
Fanaticism?
Fanaticisms looks like...
Fanaticism?
Is that a word? I'm gonna Google it before I piss off the internet here.
Our post credits is just us saying
Fanaticism.
Fanaticisms?
Holy shit.
Yeah, it is the quality of being fanatical. I hate it.
Fanaticism.
I don't like it. I'm gonna redo that without that word. Okay. Fanatism. I'm gonna try and say it. Okay.
You're being a bit spicy, so I'll say generalized you.